My name is Melissa Jeter, Librarian Specialist for the Art Tatum African American Resource Center, located in the Kent branch of the Toledo-Lucas County Public Library. Welcome to the Art Tatum African American Resource Center's Oral History Project, the Edrene Cole Collection. Dr. Edrene Cole was a local African American historian and educator who began collecting the stories of noteworthy Toledoans in the African American community. With this oral history project, the Art Tatum African American Resource Center honors her memory and her work. Join me and University of Toledo Professor of Anthropology, Dr. Willie McKether, as Toledo's very own African Americans share the stories of their lives.
Hi, I'm Dr. Willie McKether. In this segment, we're pleased to welcome District 1 Council Representative, Councilwoman Wilma Brown. Councilwoman Brown, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Councilwoman, I know that you've had a long career working for the public, both as President and Vice President of Toledo Public School Board, and your current role as a councilwoman for the Toledo City Council. I'd like to talk about your public career, but before doing so, let's talk a little bit about your early origins in Toledo. But first, tell me when and where you were born.
I was born in Birmingham, Alabama.
And tell me when you came to Toledo and why you came to Toledo.
Well, there's a little story behind that. When I was in Birmingham, I always thought that you had to go to Detroit to be somebody when I was little because my mother worked in Detroit during the war. So when we came to Toledo, I said, where is Toledo? And I came here, and before I left Birmingham, I said that I want to go to Detroit and be somebody. That was my inspiration. And we came here and only knew one person. And we came here in 1950 and got off the bus on Dorr Street.
Okay, interesting. But let me go back and talk about your life in Birmingham. Let's talk a little bit about your parents. What were their names and what kinds of work did they do in Birmingham?
Well, my mother worked at different department stores. My dad was a shoemaker. And we lived in what we call Tillersville, which was near the county jail.
Do you have any siblings?
I have one son.
One son, okay. I know when you came to Toledo, you were a teenager, so you have some experience growing up in Birmingham. What was life like growing up in Birmingham?
Well, really, a lot of things you hear about the South and segregation, it wasn't really that bad. I never encountered anything myself. We knew we had to get on the bus, and there was 3 seats that you were allowed to sit in. And if the bus was crowded, they'd move the sign up a little further, and the sign said colored. If you go downtown, you could shop anywhere, but you had the white and the colored fountains. You went to a movie, you had to go upstairs. And in Birmingham, we had our own section, 4th Avenue, downtown. There was restaurants, cab companies or whatever, and they would give me $1 to go down, and I'd go to 2 movies and buy food, and didn't have enough money to get on the bus to come home. I'd come home in a cab, and they'd have to pay the cab money.
All right.
Right.
Interesting. But with thinking back, some people have said that living in the South, you knew what was expected of you, so it was no big deal. But it had to make you feel a certain kind of way. I mean, how did you feel knowing that you had to sit in a certain place and was so restricted living in the South?
It was restricted, but it depended on how you used it. I had very good schools to go to. We had very good, dedicated black teachers. We didn't really want for much in the area that I grew up in. The only problem I had was going by the county jail, hearing the people being beat by Bull Connor, who was the sheriff there, and hearing them scream. Really?
You actually heard that?
Yes. You could hear it down at the main street, I would say, 3 blocks away.
That must have been devastating for anybody, but especially for a young person, I imagine.
And it was a daily occurrence.
Let's then fast forward again and come back to your arrival to Toledo. So you arrived to Toledo via bus.
Right.
Who did you all live with when you arrived here?
We lived with the Thurkills on Dorr Street, and I believe that was 600 block. And at that time, Dorr Street was residential, and there was businesses. We had 3 theaters, and there was everywhere to go. But I only knew one person, and that was the Thurkill's niece.
Okay.
So I had to come to a place that I knew no one at all.
Okay. So you left Birmingham by yourself, or did your parents come with you?
My mother came with me.
Okay, but you came with the intention of staying in Toledo?
Yes, when you're that age, I think I was 13, it just completely disrupted my life. I had plans on going to New York and going to Pratt School of Design, but we just it had to leave, and completely changed everything for me.
Okay. So then you knew one person when you arrived here in Toledo.
Yes.
What schools did you attend once you arrived here?
I went to Scott High School
Okay.
for 2 years.
For 2 years, okay. And what did you do after high school?
Well, after high school, when you graduated at 16, there's really not too many things you could do, but I had a skill I could sew. So I started taking in sewing at my age. And then I got a job as an alterationist and kept moving from there.
Okay, good, good. Okay, what kind of things or people did you socialize with? Once you became acclimated to the city, who were some of the people that you began to hang out with, and where did you all go?
Well, I'll tell you, for me, being lost with only knowing one adult, I was able to go to St. Philip's Lutheran Church. And that church adopted me, and the youngsters there, I started going with them to different sports events, and they all went to Scott. And it really just changed my life. I became a Lutheran, and they just, guided me through.
Okay.
And still not knowing anyone, I was able to meet certain people that was able to give me jobs.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Okay, talk a little bit then about some of your earlier jobs, rather, and talk a little bit about how difficult or easy it was to get those jobs.
Well, after I became an adult, I would say 30 years of age, I joined an organization called the Toledo Club Negro Business and Professional Women.
Okay.
And they had different projects all over the city. We did a lot of community service. And through that, I was able to meet different people.
Okay.
And through that group, I was able to get my first executive job with the Cancer Society.
Okay.
And from that, I was able to go on to the city of Toledo and what they call the CEDAR program at that time.
Okay.
And at that time, I was known as the Rat Lady because I taught rodent control in the school system for the health department. So the kids would see me in the store and they said, "Mom, there's the Rat Lady." And the mother was embarrassed, and I loved it because they knew how to go home and take care of things around their house.
Okay, good. Interesting, interesting. Well, I won't call you the Rat Lady, but that's
That's fine. It's an honor.
Let's switch gears a little bit here, Councilwoman, if we could. I want to talk a little bit about race relations in Toledo. I know 1950s, 60s time period was a very contentious period, not just in Toledo, but throughout the United States. How would you characterize race relations in Toledo in the early years here?
In the early years, it wasn't that bad because I didn't have that much exposure. But I remember when we had I call it the mini riot on Door Street, for instance. That was after the policeman was killed. Mm-hmm. And the Black Panthers was there, and buildings were set afire, and blacks would pillage their own businesses. And I was living on Woodland. And I had to leave because the constant running through my yard with the police and the whole business. And it completely destroyed Door Street. But at that time, blacks were given the opportunity, maybe one or two, even in government, there was only one black in any particular branch of government. They were always told, you can only have one.
Wow. Okay.
And that happened for a long time until a few years ago, and it changed.
So that there was at least some level of racism or discrimination even in politics then,
right.
the way it sounds.
Very much so.
Okay. How about in the social arena? Do you recall if there were restaurants or movie theaters that African Americans couldn't go to, or if they went, they were treated differently?
Not for me, there wasn't, because I was able to meet people that I went places a lot of people didn't go.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds as though because of your networks of people, that allowed you entree to many different aspects of life here in Toledo.
Right.
Okay, interesting. Let's shift gears a little bit again and talk about your political career. I know that you served as vice president and vice president of Toledo Public Schools. Did you ever intend on becoming a politician?
Never. I started out my career in politics with volunteering for other campaigns. and went on to be a ward chairman. I'm still a precinct committeeman.
Okay.
Been that for years and years, and became involved in politics and knowing all the politicians, and that they needed someone to run for the Toledo Public School Board. And I was working for Girl Scouts at the time.
Okay.
So I did that, and the first time I went in the boardroom was when I was sworn in.
Really?
I had never been in the building.
Well, how did you get, what was your motivation for even running then for the Toledo board?
My motivation was that I knew through Girl Scouts all the mothers that were Girl Scout leaders and whatever. And they were telling me about, you'd be a good candidate, and if you run, we'll all support you. And so all of those women did, all over the city. And they told their husbands, you got to vote for Wilma. And it was a shoo-in. And they still do that.
Well, obviously, it was a good choice because you were on there for a number of years.
12 years.
12 years, served as both vice president and president.
Yes.
So obviously, that was a very good choice for you then.
Well, it was a very good time for economy. I think we only missed one levy. And when we were on the school board, the board members at that time would not even take a salary. We could have voted a stipend. We didn't because we wanted the levy to pass.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I left, they started the stipend.
Start the stipend all of a
Yes.
sudden. Thinking back, what would you sort of identify as your one or two top things that you are proud to have accomplished on Toledo Public School Board?
I think community involvement was very prevalent at that time. And also the administrators that we had, they always kept us abreast on what we need to do. We had a very good treasurer and secretary, and everybody cooperated. At that time, the only thing that I resent was we had to close some schools. We had to close Mercomber, which I was the only one that voted not to close Mercomber, because it was the only real skills center that we had. Mm-hmm. Everybody didn't want to go to college. We closed Mercomber and we closed DeVilbiss. But at that time, we had 49,000 students, and we were able to move on above that.
Okay. You know, we're currently experiencing an economic downturn, and a number of schools are being closed.
Yes.
And it seems as though school administrators always blame, boards always blame when they make those kinds of tough decisions. But those decisions have to be made by someone. And it's unfortunate that it seems as though board members are oftentimes targeted because they're in position to make those kind of tough calls.
Well, the reason they closed the actual schools, because that's the largest pot of money. We could close down the different programs, all of those things. It would not be enough money. It wouldn't generate enough money.
It wouldn't do it.
So that's why they closed the buildings.
Okay, okay, good. Okay, let's then talk a little bit about your ultimate, when you ultimately ran for city council. Talk a little bit about that decision and what that was like.
Well, when I first ran for city council, I was recruited by the Democratic Party to run for that position, and they had just became involved in district and at large. It used to be all at large. And in the area where I lived, everybody said, you really need to go because we need some improvements. So I ran, and I was successful. And I think the three times that I've run, I've only been opposed once.
Really?
And that was the first time. All the others have been unopposed.
Well, people are afraid of you then, obviously.
No, I'm a wimp.
You must be very effective at what you do. You've been reelected too many times.
I treat people the way I want to be treated.
Okay, okay, good.
And you have to do that.
Okay. So then, in your current capacity, what are some of the initiatives that you're working on in Toledo?
My main initiative is the redevelopment of Dorr Street. And I've been able to do quite a bit of that in the last 3 years.
Okay.
We're building condos on Dorr that's going to be for sale, not for rent. They will be brick. We've been able to get the whole Dorr corridor repaved. We've been able to up the landscape. We're tearing down some of the old buildings. We're trying to get some more commercial buildings back the way it used to be.
Okay.
That years ago, everything we needed was on Dorr Street.
Right.
And that was a place to cruise and just watch people.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to bring some of that back.
Okay. Are you facing any obstacles to making that happen?
Yes, because the public themselves, they don't think it can happen. And when I thought about it, I didn't know how in the world I could do it. But when you meet people and you had different people in the administration that knew how to get grants, that are willing to work with you, and now with UT, it's coming too.
Okay.
True.
It's coming. It's coming back.
It's coming
Because
back.
the one thing that people talk a lot about, as you just indicated, that back in the day, that Dorr Street was the place to be. Everything that you needed, from restaurants to mechanics to movie theaters, everything was right there. But talk a little bit about what caused the demise of Dorr Street, in your opinion.
When we had the Black Panthers to move in and the policeman that was killed in his car, and that's when the riot started. And there was so many businesses that was destroyed. The banks moved out, the drugstores moved out, and urban renewal came through and widened Dorr Street so whites could get to suburbia fast. That's why we have a boulevard there almost now. And that destroyed enough land so there was no land left, especially on the north side, to be able to build anything. And that's why we have parkland on the north side.
Okay, okay, I see, I see. Well, it sounds as if Dorr Street has a great champion, someone who's taken it on as a mission to revitalize Dorr Street, and I'm confident that under your leadership that will happen. You know, I think to many you are considered a role model for a number of young African-American young ladies in particular. What do you say to young people about aspirations and about pursuing their dreams?
Well, right now we're in the process of doing a debutante cotillion, which I've been chairman for years, and it's out of the business of professional women. And it's our 45th year, and we have these young ladies that come from the school systems, and when they come in there, I try to give them something that would take them completely out of the orbit that they're used to. It's not an Afro ball. We make them go through 11 weeks of rehearsing the waltz.
Do you really?
The young men come in, there's no saggy pants, there's nothing on their heads, there's no bling. When they come in and they have to stiffen up, I said, this is not the Afro ball. You should be surprised when you see them the night of the cotillion with their long white tux on, their heads are up in the air, doing that waltz, and the parents are screaming, carrying on, you know. It's something families look to. And these young ladies, they go on to college, we give a scholarship, and we talk to them about, you can be whatever you want to be, but you have to want to do that. And that's what I talk to kids about all the time. I said, I didn't make it to Detroit, but I still am somebody.
That's right. That's right. Of course, indeed you are. And, you know, I think oftentimes for our young people in particular, needing that encouragement, showing them a different side of life, that there is more to life than the four corners of Toledo.
Right.
And the world is your oyster. You just go out there and explore it. Councilwoman, I want to shift gears one last time and talk a little bit about Edrene Cole. Edrene, of course, spent most of her life educating, documenting the history of Black Toledo. When you think about Edrene Cole, what comes to mind?
Well, Edrene Cole, by the way, is a constituent of mine, lives in my district about 4 streets from me. Her husband's still there. Mm-hmm. And I always admired her, what she tried to do. And she worked with the Excel program at UT. That's right. She was always there pushing kids. She was brought up on Dorr Street.
That's right.
And her family had a business there.
Right.
So she was one of the, I would say, forerunners on trying to get all of this documented.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, you know, one of the reasons we're doing this is to continue her and to honor her for all of her efforts in documenting Black history in Toledo.
And I feel that Edrene was one person that I emulate, that if you want something done, you've got to do it. You can't sit back and wait for someone else to do it. She was always out there pushing.
Sure, sure. You know, you're probably the 3rd or 4th person, when I ask about Edrene Cole, talk about how motivated she was and didn't let obstacles get in her way.
Right.
It was an attitude of things have to happen, do it. And don't wait till others do it. You've got to make it happen right now. So very good. Councilwoman Brown, as we begin to wrap up here, is there anything that we've not talked about that we should?
I would think that the problem that Toledo has is they're very negative about themselves. Mm-hmm. If they would just look around at some of the things that we do have, we're not the worst place in the United States. And every time we have a downtrend on something, everybody, they get excited and they go negative. If they would just be a little bit more positive and try to get out there and do something about the problem instead of complaining. Because there's only so much anyone can do. But if you say, I'm willing to help, rather than you didn't do that, that's what we need.
That's what we need. Great. Well, thank you. On that, we'll let that be the last word. And once again, let me thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come have this conversation. And I believe that the city of Toledo is better because of your work.
Well, I'm better because of the city of Toledo.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.